metallurgy, copper and copper alloys form the most dominant part. Now, there are several indicators, tangible indicators from which we can talk about this. Firstly, the presence of ores or fragments of ores. Secondly, the presence of kilns or fragments of kilns. Thirdly, the slag that is produced from the copper smelting activity as seen at Balakot. Fourthly, from the various tools which were used like crucible fragments, molds, metal drills, anvils, hammerstones, etc. And then from the presence of semi-finished or finished objects, metal objects like smelting or melting ingots. Now, these are the various indicators that are left in the archaeological record.
Actual copper smelting has been discovered in Lothal, Mohenjo-daro, Alavino and Balakot. But copper objects have been found in many other sites that did not show any processing activity. This implies a lot of things: transportation, trade, exchange and specialization, to mention a few.
Now, we can see that there is actually no relationship between the size of a site and the nature of copper working at that site. Also, we find that these sites where the copper objects have been found are seldom located close to the raw material sources. Now, which were the raw material sources for copper? They are found in parts of Balochistan and in Rajasthan near modern Ajmer and Jaipur. Sometimes it's very difficult to talk about the scale of working from the nature of archaeological evidence. Now, there is almost no site in the entire Harappan system where you do not come across beads. These beads are made from semi-precious stones like agate, jasper, chalcedony, quartz, lapis lazuli, and they are indicators, they serve as indicators of ethnic identity, economic control, trade, as well as socio-economic status. Now, what are the indicators of bead working that we find at the various sites? You find nodules, you find bead rejects, vesters, you find drills, stone drills, horns for grinding, as well as some of the unfinished bead objects. Now, what are the main sources of these raw material that we are finding? Lothal, Nagwara, Surkotoda in the Gujarat region, Mohenjo-daro, Chanhu-daro and Amri in Sindh, Mitathal and others and some other sites in Punjab. Now, here also we find that very seldom that you find that many of these sites were located close to the raw material sources. Also, there is no relationship between the size of the site and the nature of bead working. The scale of working is also sometimes difficult to talk from the nature of archaeological record. Now, very interesting ethno-archaeological studies have been done with the bead making tradition in Khambat. And here archaeologists have tried to relate between the bead making activities and the nature of archaeological deposits, and from there trying to understand the past patterns. You're all aware of the shell bangles that we still find now. Now, Harappa, it is very interesting that in the Harappan system, you find sometimes the entire sequential representation of the manufacturing techniques of some of these objects. The most important, or perhaps the species that was most well exploited of these species, was the Turbinella pyrum. Now, you find these, which is actually the conch shell. Now, Turbinella pyrum was used for making shell bangles. Apart from these Turbinella pyrum species, you also come across other species which were used in making shell bangles, inlays, figurines and various kinds of archaeological objects. Here also we find that it's very difficult to talk about the scale of working. There is as such no relationship between the size of the site and the nature of working. At Nageshwar, one has tried to locate these various shell working areas. Now, Kenoyer looking at the distribution of the shell products as well as the distribution from the raw material source regions, has tried to work out a complex system of hierarchy of interaction spheres and the exchange systems of the Harappans. Now, another important thing is where this shell was coming from. Shell product, the raw material was coming from the Karachi and the Makran coast, from Oman, as well as from the Gulf of Kutch and Gulf of Khambhat.